In Section A of the program, Materials Used and Produced in the Wool and Mohair Factories, you learnt about the history of mohair and wool in South Africa. In Section B, you will consider the raw materials used in the manufacturing process. After completing the section, you will be able to identify the primary raw materials used in factories when producing raw mohair and wool. List the material identification codes, labels and markings as required in your workplace. Describe the characteristics and properties of raw mohair and wool fibers. Let's begin by looking at examples of natural fibers and then examples of synthetic fibers. Natural fibers can come from animals such as the following: the cashmere goat, which produces the beautiful and expensive cashmere wool; the alpaca goat, which produces alpaca wool; our very own Angora goats, which produce mohair; and merino sheep, which produce a wonderful wool fiber. Natural fibers can also come from plants and even insects. These are some of those fibers. Cotton comes from the cotton plant. We get bamboo fibers from the bamboo plant. These fibers have antibacterial qualities and are used for the making of bandages, face masks, and many other products. We get silk from the cocoon of the silkworm, and this is used for the production of luxury items today. And then there is also spider silk. It is difficult to collect spider silk, but this wonderful natural fiber has been used over thousands of years to make items such as fishing nets and clothes. In contrast to natural fibers, synthetic fibers are man-made and are based on petroleum and petrochemicals. Synthetic fibers include such fibers as nylon, polyester, rayon, and terylene. Let's consider the raw materials used in the processing of mohair and wool in our factories. Before either mohair and wool can be processed, the goats and sheep need to be sheared on the farm. Angora goats are sheared twice a year, either by hand or with electric shears. Raw mohair fiber is produced. When it comes to sheep, typically each adult sheep is shorn once each year to produce raw wool fibers. Another task that needs to be done before the wool can reach the factory is that of grading or classing the fiber. With mohair, this process delivers oily mohair fiber. With wool, grading yields the graded wool fibers. Once in the factory, the first step that must be taken is the cleaning of the fiber. When cleaning any fiber, there are three things that must be considered: time, temperature, and additives that are needed to remove the grease in the fiber. Mohair can be easily damaged in the cleaning process, so a careful routine needs to be followed in the factory. When raw merino wool is washed, the chemicals used to remove the natural grease layer result in only about half of the initial wool being available to be converted into yarn. This process makes merino wool more expensive than other sheep wool. When wool is cleaned, the process yields wool grease from which lanolin is produced. Once the wool has been scoured, it must be carded, combed, and spun to be converted into different types of yarn that can be made into fabric. We will discuss carding, combing, and spinning in Section C of this program. Mohair and wool have very different physical and chemical properties. Therefore, in the textile industry, they need to be separated carefully from each other. They also need to be carefully labeled and marked. Raw mohair is classed according to the following characteristics: texture or fineness, length, style, class and character, and general appearance. The finest hair is obtained from kids shorn for the first time at 6 months. As the animals grow older, the hair becomes stronger. The ideal length for mohair is from 125 mm to 150 mm. The trade prefers mohair to be not too short or too long. Length can be measured and the different lengths are indicated with a corresponding symbol. For example, A represents mohair that is more than 150 mm long, and E represents mohair that is between 50 and 75 mm long. When it comes to sheep's wool and merino wool, different textile symbols and markings are used. The Woolmark logo is one of the world's most recognizable textile symbols, and for most people it indicates that the product bearing the mark is made from 100% pure new wool. These products meet key performance standards, providing confidence to consumers that a quality product is being bought. South Africans are also familiar with the South African Merino wool mark. Raw wool is classed according to aspects that include length and fineness. Wool can be divided into 9 length categories. There is normally a significant price difference between wool longer than 50 mm, long wool, and wool less than 50 mm, which is short wool. Long wool is used for worsted yarn. The fibers go through a comb process, short fibers are removed and fibers are drawn parallel to ensure a smooth appearance. These fabrics would be used for items such as suits, pants, jackets and skirts. The worsted weight yarn you see on the screen was made from merino wool. Interestingly, worsted weight yarn has nothing to do with something bad or worse, but the name comes from Worsted, a village in the English county of Norfolk. Short wool is used for woolen yarn. It consists of short fibers which are not combed but only go through a carding process. This process produces a soft, fluffy and irregular display, and the wool is used for blankets, thick coats and felt products. Fineness is the main characteristic for determining the price of raw wool. Wool diameter is measured in micrometers, also called microns. A micron shows the diameter of the fiber and is equivalent to 1/1000th of a millimeter. Wool is classed as superfine, fine, medium, strong or overstrong. In this final section of the video, we need to consider the characteristics and properties of raw mohair and wool. Mohair from the Angora goat is distinct from other wools for several reasons. Though mohair fibers are thicker than other wool, the mild climate in which Angora goats are grown means it is not as coarse as other wools. Its longer length gives the fiber its smoothness and results in a uniquely fuzzy fabric. Traditionally, mohair came in 2 qualities, mohair and kid mohair. Kid mohair comes from a younger goat that delivers a finer, less coarser mohair fiber. However, kid mohair is more costly. The best quality mohair is the so-called summer kid mohair, which uses the softest fibers from the very first shearing of a mohair goat. All mohair sheared after this first shearing will be coarser and therefore less desirable fibers. To assess the quality of mohair, buyers carry out objective and subjective tests. The ideal style of mohair is a combination of twist and even character within a soft but firm staple. Old Angora goats of good style and character can continue to produce hair of good quality. Mohair is classed either as A, B or C quality. The general appearance of raw mohair is evaluated by considering the following characteristics. Firstly, the luster of the mohair. It should not be dull in appearance. Secondly, the mohair must be free of kemp, black and brown fibers or any other foreign fibers. Foreign fibers can harm the end product considerably and are easily identifiable once the hair has been washed and combed. Thirdly, the mohair must contain just enough natural oil so that it is hardly noticeable. Fourthly, it must be free from dust, stain and seed. The raw mohair should preferably be bought from farmers who A. do not transport goats on dusty roads and B. do not herd flock in a veld which is wet and will stain the hair, and C. keep their goats in clean camps to avoid seeds in the hair. Mohair South Africa has developed a quality mark to show that products contain only the finest mohair fiber. You will need to find a copy of this mark and include it in your workbook. Wool varies from the superfine merino to coarse hairy wools. The superfine merino wool produces a fiber similar to cashmere, which is very high luster fiber. Quality of raw wool depends on evenness of crimp in wool, softness being free of kemp, coarse and colored fibers. Quality plays an important role in determining the fineness. The finer the fiber, the better the quality of the wool. Quality can be classified as either good, average or poor. On page 18 of your participant handbook, you can read about the different tests that buyers perform to determine the quality of wool. In this section, we have looked at examples of natural fibers and man-made fibers, some raw materials used in factories when producing mohair and wool, the identification codes, labels and markings used in mohair and wool production, and some characteristics and properties of raw mohair and wool fibers. We have reached the end of section B. Before you continue to the next section, complete tasks 3 and 4 in your workbooks. You will find the answers to the questions by reading through section B in your participant handbook. After completing tasks 3 and 4, you may continue to section C, which is all about the end products of mohair and wool processes and their uses.